The bill requiring the Department of Justice to release files related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein heads to President Donald Trump's desk for a signature. Hello, and thanks for joining us here at 5. I'm Connie Leonard.
And I'm Doug Proffitt. We are keeping a close eye on the still developing story tonight, the historic vote coming after months of pushing for it by Kentucky Republican Congressman Thomas Massie. You're going to hear from him. But first, President Trump says he'll sign the bill into law. But it isn't known when this will happen. Here's correspondent Julia Benbrook at the White House.
A White House official told our team that in recent days there was an understanding that a vote on releasing the files was an inevitable reality. That likely played a role in President Donald Trump's sharp turn from branding the issue as a, quote, Democratic hoax to saying he will sign the bill into law. The bill, which orders the Department of Justice to release all files related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, passed in the House with overwhelming support Tuesday afternoon.
The yeas are 427, the nays are 1.
And then just hours later, the Senate adopted it.
The Senate has passed the bill under unanimous consent.
Now the question is, when will Americans see what is in these files? That's essentially up to the DOJ, and ongoing investigations could complicate that process. Just last week, Trump directed the DOJ to investigate several high-profile Democrats for their ties to Epstein.
Even if they do these what seem to be partisan investigations, that's another thing that bothers me about the announcement the president made is he named Democrats and things that he was going to investigate. These survivors are not partisan. They don't belong to one party, and the perpetrators aren't either. And so this shouldn't be about political divide. So I hope that was sort of a bluff, and I hope that the DOJ will release all the files.
The legislation gives the Justice Department 30 days after it's enacted to comply and make public the files related to Epstein's case. At the White House, I'm Julia Benbrook.
And today we caught up with Thomas Massie to ask him about the future of the effort to release the files.
Massie talked today with WHAS11 political reporter Isaiah Kim Martinez. And Isaiah, he seems convinced that Trump's allies in Washington are blocked from covering up the files because of the way this bill is written.
Right, Doug, Connie, you're exactly right. Over the phone, I actually asked Massie if he's worried about heavy redactions. He tells me he's not, because he says his legislation only allows for very specific exemptions.
Republican Congressman Thomas Massie tells me the successful vote he led to release all the DOJ's investigative files on Jeffrey Epstein will have a ripple effect felt across the country.
In the United States, we may see names coming off of buildings and scholarships being renamed because rich and powerful men are going to be caught finally and see some justice for the victims.
I talked to the Northern Kentuckian for 7 minutes over the phone, discussing what it took to get his bill over the finish line, even having to convince other Republican lawmakers to go against the Trump administration's wishes.
Well, I had to fight the Speaker, the President, the Vice President, the FBI Director, and the Attorney General on this. They all turned against the notion of releasing the Epstein files. But what we had were the survivors on our side and public opinion, and we were able to push this through.
The U.S. Department of Justice will be required within 30 days of the president's signing of the bill to release these documents. Some Americans speculate there will be heavy redactions. Massie doesn't expect that to be an issue.
They could try to mitigate the release, but, by, for instance, opening investigations in certain areas. The legislation only allows for very narrowly tailored exemptions to the releases, and the exemptions can only be temporary.
Now, I asked Representative Massie if the decisions by congresswomen like Lauren Boebert of Colorado and Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia represent some kind of sea change within the Republican Party. He says they've stayed true to their promises. He says the president and his administration have deviated from them. Doug, Connie.
All right. Isaiah, thank you. Well, Harvard is launching an investigation into former university president Larry Summers and his relationship to Epstein.
This move comes after a House committee released the emails that Summers exchanged with Epstein. Those messages show years of personal correspondence between Larry Summers and the convicted sex offender, dating from at least 2013 to 2019. The emails included Summers making sexist comments and seeking Epstein's romantic advice.
But Summers is also making other headlines today and is resigning from the board of OpenAI for his involvement with Epstein. Summers previously served as former President Bill Clinton's Treasury Secretary. He also was former President Barack Obama's National Economic Council Director.
According to Harvard's school newspaper called The Crimson, the probe will also examine Epstein's ties to other people associated with Harvard. And that list includes Summers' own wife and nearly a dozen other current and former Harvard affiliates. We had drizzle in town today. We still got a little bit of fog hanging around.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't burn off, Connie. And
You
it's
mean
nice.
that fog wall that's behind Mallory?
It's been nice and chilly.
is
It's
it?
been nice and chilly as well with this continued drizzle around the area.
Yeah, really hard to get this out of here today. So a lot of mist, drizzle, fog conditions, cloudy skies as we take that live look from our Hughes and Coleman Shriners Children's camera here. Just a dreary day overall, and that's kept temperatures in check. We have hardly budged because of all that cloud cover, mist and drizzle. Temperatures are in the 40s and 50s. Similar to yesterday, we do have a bit of a gradient in these temperatures, or a range where we have lower 40s to the northeast, mid 50s to the southwest. Satellite and radar. Radar doesn't really pick up on drizzle or mist very well because it's very fine and closer to the surface. But obviously we've been locked in the cloud cover today. Our visibility map does show those foggy conditions, but some spots like Fort Knox under a half a mile of visibility here. Louisville looking at about 3 miles of visibility. So foggy conditions all across Kentuckiana. Because of this cloud cover, mist, fog, etc., temperatures really not budging all too much over the next several hours here. Heading into tonight, we'll just dip down a few degrees from here down into the 40s. And then tomorrow, expect another dreary start to the day. By the afternoon, we could be tracking some scattered showers because, yes, we do have more rounds of rain on the way before we get to the weekend. I'll be talking much more about that coming up in our 7-day forecast.
Mallory, thank you. Sad news for Louisville Ironman fans tonight. The 2026 Ironman 70.3 event in Louisville will not happen next year. The organization is citing our upcoming road projects all across Metro Louisville and highways as well as the reason why they're just going to be holding off on this event for 2026, canceling it for next year at least. In a Facebook post from the Louisville Sports Commission today, the Ironman team said while they know the news may be disappointing, they are grateful to the community. The commission says it hopes to return in the future when the conditions allow. Though an exact return year is unclear, road work does continue on River Road. And as we told you just recently, a major I-71 project is now going to be underway for 2 years. A Louisville Christmas tradition is back like none other. The Metro holiday tradition, which dates back to the 1980s. The tree delivered to downtown Louisville.
And here's a check of today's Kentucky Lottery jackpots. Mega Millions, $60 million. Powerball, $593 million.
The Kentucky Lottery, funding education for over 1 million Kentucky students.